What I was trying to get to last time was the story about the pigeon in 20 degrees below. So from the last time, I left the pigeon. The pigeon was about a mile from my house. Mile and a half, mile and a quarter. So I was walking back to my house. You have to watch my last video for this to make sense. I was walking back toward my house. And about a half mile from my house, crossing the bridge, I met a dude. I can't remember what he was asking for. He was maybe asking for a smoke or for a light. He was a little older than me. He was bundled up too. I was bundled up. Big time. Had gloves, hoodie, wool hat, everything. He was telling me about his friend who had told him to go to such and such a place to get such and such a thing and come back with it. I didn't really follow it, but he needed a light, he needed a smoke, something. And he thanked me for it. Now for me, archetypally, that married with the bird, because from there I walked back home and I got some bread. And then I went back. I thought about it a lot. So here I am in my domesticated life, and I thought about it so much on my way back. Like, there's a pigeon out there. I don't know its gig. I don't know its intent. But like something called me out tonight in a peculiar way that stands out, you know? No. About 20 minutes before, 15 minutes before, I had been across the street, across the way in this little parking lot that hugged this. It's hard to tell between North Walpole and Bellows Falls exactly where New Hampshire and Vermont lies. And unless you have a business there or something, but like it's hard to tell exactly what's New Hampshire and Vermont. And I was across the way, and there's around here, because this was such an industrial hub approximately 111 years ago. Approximately 111 years ago, because this particular area was such a industrial hub, but also every industrial hub is an intellectual hub. Make no mistake. Ever. And because not only was this was an innovative hub, especially historically, as that high story meets with the Abenaki, which seems to be a unique tribe because its territory was both. It was territorial, but its territory was traced in linear temporal web patterns across time and space. It wasn't just a spatial, geographic thing. the amazing innovation of the Abenaki among the tribes. There's a lot of heat and a lot of focus or praise, among some of the more popularly named tribes. But the Abenaki, Abe Naki, the Abe Naga, they kind of possess a special position because they didn't have a permanent home in space, but they cut between space and time in such a way that they carved out an eternal permanence. It could be well stated that the Abenaki, maybe not alone, maybe not singularly, but maybe alone and singularly, that among the tribes of the indigenous Americas, or whatever you want to call them, that among the tribes, those who are globally given the least praise would be the Abenaki, who would also be, as far as space-time goes, the best. They left no permanent footprint. They left no permanent boundary. They were always an ebb and flow. They existed from the beginning. They persisted to this day. My last video. I'm trying to remember what I didn't get to. What didn't I get to? Oh yeah, the pigeon. So I saw him, he flew up. And the pattern, the way the light was shining down in this space, for me it was one of those singular moments in time. The flapping of the wings of this pigeon, it reminded me a little bit of the animation of the old school Watership Down cartoon animation of El Herrera. Anyway, the way this man, he wasn't homeless, but he was certainly on the fringe. And he thanked me for my offerings, even though he didn't accept all of them, but a couple. So I walked home, I grabbed some bread, and I walked back out. I took a whiz, I smoked a butt, I probably had a pop. Well, maybe I didn't have a pop, because maybe I wasn't popping then, I can't remember. As it so happens, I had about 2 years of sobriety except for cigarettes and coffee. And then I had another 2 years of drunkenness. Weed. They were pretty much the same. As it so happens. But anyway, so I walked back home, grabbed some bread. Walked back to the place where I saw the pigeon dove. He wasn't there anymore. I couldn't see him in the rafters anymore. He wasn't on the ground anymore. When I went there, it was as if I saw him dying. There was something in me that was being called to, I feel, now. You know, this dying animal, this dying light, this dying brave bird, who for some reason hadn't gotten the call to fly south, right? Remained here up in the north with some kind of faith, right? It's possible. This is my hope. It's not necessarily a prayer because I don't mean to pray against truth to create the truth that I want. Yet at the same time, like, I hope that this is true, and if it's not true in the way I experienced it, I hope it's true archetypally. I hope it's true spiritually. I hope it's true beneath the surface. I hope it's true in the realm of hope. So I walked back home, grabbed some bread, walked back. So that's from the time I saw the pigeon till the time I walked back to where he was with the bread was about 3 to 3.5 miles. So by now it's definitely like 1:30 or so, because I'm slow and it was cold. Though my knees worked better back then, and it wasn't that long ago. Well, when I got back, of course, no bird was there. So I threw the few pieces of bread I had, threw a couple down on the spot where he was standing when I saw him at first time. And I threw a couple pieces beneath the beams at the loading dock, even though I didn't see him up in the beams, but it was dark. But it got me out, got me looking, got me seeking, got me thinking about what it means to be alive and the difference between the symbol and the reality, but also the connection, the conjunction with the symbol and the reality. Now, the symbol of that night for me, even in my melancholy, even in my loneliness, even in my coldness, even in my seeking and my searching, there was enough warmth in my belly, both like from the coal. Right? We all have this furnace in our gut from the shit we eat, but we all also have this nuclear furnace in our gut for the electricity that is expressed through us. We have 2 power plants in our belly. And those aren't the only ones. And they're the same one. And their only difference is the way that they partake in. Shapes. Including atemporal shapes. I shouldn't say atemporal shapes, but quasi-temporal shapes collapsing upon an atemporal unified dynamic. The black bag, the black box. Yeah, I went back to the bird, and the bird weren't there no more, but it was a super strange day, and I came back, watched the rest of the bird cage. Maybe if you watch that video, these last two videos will make more sense, you know? That movie, Birdcage. Maybe so, maybe not. I still came back with the feeling that in some way I had maybe, a strong maybe, a strong maybe, a strong perhaps, a strong probably. I had saved that bird's life, and my coming back with the bread to find the bird not there after was the dedication it took to bring me there in the first place when I startled the bird to make it move and summon the fire within to get it to rise. What am I saying by that? Well, it's a way of thinking. It's a little bit poetic, but it's a little bit poesis. 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 It's a little bit both. It's a little bit creationary, like the things we do. My coming home and then going back with the bread, knowing it was a futile effort, or suspecting, and as it proved true, it was a futile effort, at least in the time. Perhaps something came thereafter. But I went back with the idea of the immediacy of relieving the pain and suffering. That was it. That was my entire intention. The question is, even though I went back and my endeavor was unfruitful, was that commitment, was that endeavor something that time reached backward through? That commitment in time that failed after. Right? Something happened to me, something happened to you, something happened in the world. And we were committed to it in such a way that after the fact, we made some kind of material or temporal or actional, some kind of ritualistic, some kind of commemorative action, gesture. We did this thing to commemorate this thing which came before. Yet the gesture we performed yielded afterward nothing. But we can ask, because many things distraught, many things deep, many things bewildering, many things ritualistic, habitualistic, culturally, these culturally indoctrinated performances. We engage in them. And it seems as though the major error is that we believe in them wholeheartedly or we dismiss them wholeheartedly, not recognizing that the wholeness of the entire process exists there in between. There in between, where the ugliness meets the beauty. And that's not to equate or equalize, because there's order and chaos, and we're tempted to set those equally opposed to one another. They're not. Esoterically, the struggle of the age of this particular day is between that. But it's a false dichotomy. That is not the struggle. It is the place where the temporal form, the posteriori form of the struggle pretends as a projection from the true struggle that truth is collapsing upon in time from beyond time. I went back with the bread to the bird. I went back with the bread to the bird. I threw the bread, it was about minus 20, 17, minus 23. When you're living on the river and you're going up and down, even slight elevations, the temperature varies a lot. And on a night when there's a bright moon, or depending on where you walk, where the street lights are. Around here, around my house, they come on and off. I'm assuming it's a power grid, power saving type thing where sometimes the lights are on, sometimes they're off. And some of the street lights are always on. Some come on, some go off. So sometimes when we walk down the street, we see long shadows, and other times at the same time, we see short shadows. Sometimes we see long and short shadows at the same time. Sometimes we don't. I'm supposed to be doing things I told myself I wasn't going to make any more videos, but things come up, and I guess the inflection point I've crossed is that I'm making these videos a little bit closer to my heart, while at the same time I'm throwing things away, because the last 2 years were a stage. The last 2 years were a chapter. Not a chapter. The last 2 years were a book. I guess the chapters will be determined after, but from the time I came from Agnes to Mary, which is this day, I came from Agnes to Mary. It took me 2 years. And now I understand that most of what I love and know and wish to grow, I have to leave behind. Because I have to dedicate myself to what is needed. I have to dedicate myself to the focal point of this, not just this time, but this space-time. I don't care where I project, as long as I get the kill shot, as long as I hit Achilles' heel, as long as I pierce that one missing scale of the dragon's armor. Desperately. That's my dedication. I have nothing else, of course. Why would I? I'm broken. I'm completely failed. The only thing I have left to dedicate my life to is the principle that the future of goodness demands. It's highfalutin and true.